Bermuda, Bermuda, they say, pronounce it Bermuda, a real beautiful company.
This is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water.
Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
I'm very consistent. I'm a very stable genius.
I had the best words, tolerated. I know words.
Mike Pounds.
I hope they now go and take a look at the oranges of the investigation. But there's no better word than stupid.
Anonymous, really anonymous.
I'm very highly educated. One of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. I had the best words.
God bless the United States.
Around the nation, Waldorf Nation, everybody, welcome to the show. It's Friday, TJIF. We got some stories. We've got a lot of disastrous coronavirus stories, unfortunately for you guys today, but also some interesting and fun stuff. We're going to talk about, of course, Ivanka Trump just getting absolutely destroyed because she's planting trees. Now, wait a minute. Why would she be getting attacked for planting trees? Well, we'll get into it. We'll talk about that. We also have, Trump's campaign fracturing. A lot of the people inside the Trump campaign starting to point fingers. We've got a massive spike in, or I should say, not a massive spike in COVID, but we've got some COVID stories. Let's just say that they're pretty negative here. So we'll talk about that. So it's one of those days where, unfortunately, we're not going to have a lot of happy stories, unfortunately. But nonetheless, it's important, so we'll get through it. I will not be talking about the town halls last night because they were a shit show. I'm just getting that out of the way. All right, anyway. So we'll do that. Before I do, please like and share the stream. Very helpful to do so. Hello to Twitch. Hello to Facebook and YouTube as well. Please like and share in your respective platforms. If you could, please. Helps us out greatly. Also, like I said, consider becoming a patron or sending a super chat. Also, before we get into it, happy birthday, Dango Bango. So I saw that in the chat earlier today. I want to wish you a happy birthday. Trump's town halls was so much worse. I got a question. What is malding? What is that? I've heard that word and I don't know what it is. So if you could help me out on that, I'd appreciate that. Maybe send it in the super chat so I can see it. Because I hear this a lot, and I don't know what it means. I am an old person, and so if you could help me out, much appreciated. All right. Anyway, so let's start out, and we'll talk about why some Twitter users are mad at Ivanka Trump for planting trees. Ivanka Trump is getting called out on social media for attempting to greenwash her father's record on the environment. So now the daughter, first daughter, and advisor to the president, tweeted on Thursday that she was proud to support the president's signing of an executive order. Well, this executive order, of course, would basically call to plant 1 trillion trees worldwide by 2030. Oh, good. We're doing some we're planting some trees. What could be wrong with that? I mean, planting trees is good, right? Yeah, it is. And of course, I support planting trees. This is, of course, is part of the World Economic Forum's project, and so they're calling on people to plant trees. All right, cool. Again, I'm in favor of that. But here's the thing. It's not going to really do a whole lot if we continue to do the policies the Trump administration is pushing forward and has been doing for the last 4 years. So, for example, the Trump administration has been pumping additional carbon and methane into the atmosphere and has been gutting environmental regulations and rules that were originally passed by the Obama administration. Of course, that has a lot to do with it. Anything that Obama did, Donald Trump instinctively has to undo. And of course, if it helps corporations, then obviously Donald Trump is in favor of that as well. Also, if it goes against windmills, Donald Trump has an irrational hatred of windmills, which is kind of hilarious and sad at the same time, because then you can make a Don Quixote joke, how he's tilting at windmills all the time, and also NIMBY jokes, and then windmill cancer jokes, which is always fun as well. Ridiculous. So anyway, now more seriously, the president has, of course, embraced fossil fuels and has pursued an anti-environmental agenda, rolling back dozens of rules aimed at protecting natural resources. In fact, just today, The Hill reported that the Environmental Protection Agency will now allow utilities, these power companies, to store toxic waste from coal in open pits. So coal sludge, just a nice little open, unlined pits. They didn't even want to put plastic in there to try to keep it from, leaking into the soil and into the groundwater. That was too much for these companies who lobbied extensively for this rule. They're like, no, we don't even want to do that. Let's just have the EPA allow us to put this coal ash, slurry, sludge, whatever it is, into these giant open pits. Because we don't know what else to do with it. I mean, we thought about dumping into the river, and we're going to do that, but the rivers are kind of far away, and so let's just make these pits. There are 400 such pits across the United States, and probably more now. And so there's that. Now, research has also found, by the way, and I mentioned plastic lining, but even so, plastic-lined coal ash ponds are also likely to leak. So really, they couldn't even do the minimum, which would have leaked anyway. But those risks are even higher when a clay barrier is the only layer used to hold what is basically being described to in the article as arsenic-laced sludge. Yummy. A big old glass of that. I guess maybe if you're like Mitch McConnell, you're like, oh yeah, I drink it all up. I drink your milkshake. Ugh, gross. All right. So now, Lisa Evans, an attorney with Earth Justice, which is fighting the ruling in court, which, look, depending on what court it gets to, if it's in some of the lower courts, then maybe they've got a chance. But you bring this to the Supreme Court, I don't know. Odds are not good. I'm just saying, odds are not good. She said, when ponds without lining leak, it's often more aggressive, faster, and harder to control. She added that utilities are asking for favors and exemptions, and the EPA, under the Trump administration, is willing to give them and is willing to rush to provide these exemptions. That's what the Trump administration is doing. They also, of course, eliminated and slightly replaced the Clean Power Plan with weaker regulation, and is in the process of eliminating other regulations that limit greenhouse gas emissions. President Trump has also lifted bans on oil and gas exploration in the Arctic, National Wildlife Refuge, and parts of the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, and in coastal waters around the United States and in areas formerly protected as national monuments in Utah. And that's, of course, among all the different efforts at deregulation that he has done. It's basically a disaster. So, look, you look at Donald Trump and his record on the environment, it's horrible. It's horrifying. And I'm sorry, like, I see some comments already where wouldn't it be a twist if Donald Trump banned fracking? He wouldn't ban fracking. I mean, look, even if he understood that fracking is actually driving a decrease in the use of coal, which might actually slightly benefit the coal industry, he wouldn't do it. Again, he's not smart enough to realize that there's a connection there, but also all the lobbyists, from these oil and gas companies, he works for them. So anyway, now, one more thing that he's doing, by the way, is, he appointed Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Amy Coney Barrett's father was a lawyer for Shell Energy. So that's an oil company, and whose nomination has been pushed by energy companies as well that are part of the Chamber of Commerce, likely because there's a really big case coming to the Supreme Court very soon, which would rule on whether companies should be held liable for climate change. You know that climate change is being driven by just 100 corporations. About 70% of the emissions is being emitted by 100 corporations. It's not the people that, and I love the retort from idiots, right? They'll come up and be like, oh, you drive a car to work, but you're concerned about climate change. Little hypocrisy. No, moron. No, it's the 100 corporations that are responsible for 70% of the emissions, the vast majority of the emissions. So maybe we should, rein those guys in first, and then maybe work on some alternatives, like electric cars being hooked up, of course, to a grid that is not running on coal, natural gas, or anything like that, or oil, or whatever. I know, it's just, those people drive me nuts because the information is literally there that you can look at. And you can find out very, very easily. But they think that this is some sort of own to environmentalists. Hilarious. All right, anyway. Oh, by the way, on that, in the rush to confirm Amy Coney Barrett, they did note that the companies are expecting to be treated more favorably in the Supreme Court. Gee, I wonder why. All that said, planting trees is not going to offset this horrible record on climate change. It's just not going to do a goddamn thing. And so there you go. All right. So let's get to fun responses to this from social media, because I always love to read those. Justin Hendricks points out that your administration has destroyed environmental regulations and agreements and has hastened climate change, and adds, you are killing your own children. False. Actually, poor people are going to be most affected first. You're going to have developing countries that actually get the short end of the stick about this. And the reason I say that is the United States and these Western countries, we actually had our chance to go through oil, natural gas, coal, and through that development. Less developed countries, however, we're telling them that you can't use that stuff, and we're not helping them to be able to modernize their energy systems. And so we're kind of fucking them over too, when you think about it. And so it's interesting because libertarians, they try to use that point to say, well, that's why we shouldn't ban oil, natural gas, or anything like that, because those other countries, they deserve it. No, what we need to do, if we actually are concerned about the environment, is to actually go and invest in those countries and help them modernize their energy systems so that they don't have to go through those phases of energy development. And they can actually get to a point of where they're not contributing to global climate emissions and still are able to get their energy. That would make sense, but of course we're not going to do that because, LOL capitalism and lots of donations from the fossil fuel sector to our politicians, who control everything. All right. Anyway, more. Oh, yeah. On Ivanka's kids, by the way. I did want to mention that. You know that as these smaller, less affluent countries get destroyed by climate change, her kids are still going to live a life of air-conditioned luxury in the United States. So, as the rest of the planet burns. By the time that they're going to be affected, it'll be too late. So, unfortunately, that person is wrong about it, but I like the sentiment. All right, there's more. One person says, question, with all the deregulation, where do you plan on planting those trees? Maybe they'll replace them in California after the wildfires are over, so that then next year they can get burnt down again. Forest management, right? In fact, this is the next couple of questions here. But first, comments. One person says, first your father does everything he can to deregulate and destroy the environment. Then you pretend to save trees. Yes, trees. Mr. McDollop says, don't try to limit our use of fossil fuels as the U.S. emits more per capita than any other country in the world. Just plant trees, which would take 30 plus years to have an impact. It is greenwashing. And the mass candidate says, you're an incredible advocate for the climate, Ivanka. A true saint if there ever was one. Just like your dad who claims science doesn't know if climate change is real. Indeed. And then, finally, let's get to forest management. Sharon asks, is your father going to rake all the leaves and fallen branches? Forest management. Andrea Valenti says, will that include 1 billion rakes to make sure the forest beds are fireproof? Asking for a friend. I love the forest management. The problem with California and the wildfires is that they just don't have forest management. They need to have better forest management. Well, you know who controls most of the forests that are currently burning down right now? The federal government. So maybe the federal government, i.e. the thing that you control, might want to do better forest management. So that's kind of your problem, dude. Just saying. And then finally, Leslie says, proud to support this ambitious effort to pose as a public servant to further my family's wealth. And obviously, that's what they've been doing the entire time. The Trump family is only in power in order to increase their own wealth. We see it all the time, how they're milking public programs, directing campaign money into their own pockets, Secret Service paying for, stays at their hotels and golf cart rentals at Trump's, different golf courses. We see that transfer of money from public hands into Donald Trump's private finances. And that's, of course, the reason why you should divest from your businesses, or at least one of them. There's plenty of excellent reasons that you should divest from your public businesses before you get into office. But that's just one of them. Obviously, the corruption and the grift and all that stuff. But he doesn't care. They don't care. Because they're all about the grift. Always have been. All right. Moving on. What was that? There we go. President Donald Trump may be feeling better after dealing with his own case of coronavirus, but inside the Trump campaign, things are not going quite as well. According to Axios' Jonathan Swan, 3 senior Trump advisors who recently talked to campaign manager Bill Stepien had walked away from that conversation believing that he thinks that they will lose. This is Donald Trump's campaign manager, giving people the impression that Yeah, I think we're screwed. I think we're going to lose the election. Now, that's despite, of course, Trump's shock from behind victory against Hillary Clinton in 2016. Now, here's the thing about that. That victory, I believe that's a fluke. I believe that was lightning in a bottle. It was the right conditions for an alleged outsider like Trump. Never in a million years could we have seen somebody like Donald Trump winning an election. But it happened, and now, of course, everybody's freaked out about it because here we had this super, super improbable thing happening. And now everybody's understandably worried that it's going to happen again. But that's the thing, right? So now Donald Trump lied his way into office, but he was able to do so because he went against a deeply unpopular establishment candidate who was very much disliked, and yet, at the same time, thanks to our system, was able to secure the popular vote against him and still lose. And so there was so many different factors that happened here. That said, since we don't live in a system where more votes mean that you win, and instead we live in a system where somebody in rural Kentucky ends up having a vote that is worth many more times more than the votes of people living in New York and California, we ended up getting this a-hole as president. Congratulations. But even Trump's own campaign manager now is worried that this is not going to be the case much longer, as polls show Donald Trump behind in a lot of places in these important battleground states. And let's be honest, right? The polls weren't really all that off back in 2016. There was a variance, and the problem is that Hillary Clinton did not have that much of a lead in the polls going into November. Now, you look at the difference between Biden and Trump, it's huge. Nationally, of course, you're going to have a gigantic lead, but even in a lot of these battleground states, you have way more than a 5 to 7 point lead with Biden over Trump. It's a pretty big margin, all right? So even a lot of people on the conservative side, people like Frank Luntz, are saying, I just don't see Donald Trump having the math to win re-election. And so now, as a result, chaos and finger-pointing all in the Trump campaign. Sources tell us, one, that the Trump campaign is filled with internal blaming and pre-spinning of a potential loss, accelerating a dire move that is driven that's driven by a daily barrage of bleak headlines over the past several weeks. Fascinating. And it's not as if those headlines are not well-deserved. Donald Trump's done a terrible job of dealing with coronavirus. That's number one on people's minds. Obviously, a very important factor is the economy as well. And look, we haven't had a relief bill in 6 months. A coronavirus relief bill can't get through the Senate. I mean, I don't blame that all on Trump, obviously, but you've got Mitch McConnell and the Republican Senate that are stonewalling basically everything. But I do have to point out that early on, Donald Trump did say, we're not going to negotiate with Nancy. We're going to end negotiation until after my election. And so what do? And then, of course, when the pills popped in, or I should say when they took effect after popping the pills, he's like, oh, my God, okay, let's negotiate. Yes, let's do a $1.8 trillion deal, which is kind of close to what Nancy Pelosi had originally agreed with, even though her original bill was at least $2.8 trillion. And, of course, the HEROES Act, I think, might have been a little bit more in the $3 trillion range and much more comprehensive. Now, she rejected that, and you could make an argument whether or not she was right to be able to do that. But the whole point is that Mitch McConnell and the rest of the Republicans wouldn't let it go even if they all agreed. Which means Mitch McConnell and the Republicans appear to have been abandoning Donald Trump in favor of course, their donors, which really don't want to have any sort of taxpayer money go to relief. which is insane because when you think about Wall Street, I mean, and when you think about businesses, small businesses at least, well, they need people to have money. And of course, the PPP, that program, Paycheck Protection, is really important for small businesses. But these larger corporations are actually doing fantastically well. So they look at stimulus and go, not really interested. So there's that. And Mitch McConnell might be choosing that, unsurprisingly, over his loyalty to Donald Trump. Maybe because they see that Donald Trump his campaign is going down in flames. So we'll see. But again, he is in a world of hurt because a lot of people are looking at him and saying, why is there no stimulus? Why is coronavirus continuing to spread? Why is everything so disastrous? Well, it's because of you and your terrible mismanagement of basically everything. So now there's more. There's more because the campaign is not raising a lot of money. In fact, Biden's campaign is raising hundreds of millions of dollars more than Donald Trump's campaign. That said, it's not as if that didn't happen in 2016. To be fair, Clinton's campaign outspent Trump's by like 5-1. Some insane amount. So, okay. But that, again, that's not this election. I have the feeling this election is much different. Donald Trump is on the defensive during an economic recession under his watch and a pandemic. And a lot of his decisions, of course, are being questioned. For example, campaign sources tell Swan that they're baffled by the campaign's decision to continue, quote, half-assed ad spending in places like Wisconsin, even though the campaign believes that the state is no longer winnable. So Wisconsin, along with Michigan and Pennsylvania, those were the states that Donald Trump had won back in 2016 by small margins. Now they're looking at it. Michigan's out of reach. Pennsylvania, I think they're probably going to lose Pennsylvania by at least a few points. And Michigan, Wisconsin, all of them out of reach. Where's that path to 270 now? Out of reach. Out of reach. And so they're asking, well, why are we spending money in a state that we might lose? That we're probably going to lose. Now, defenders of campaign manager Bill Stepien, however, told Swan that he's still spending it. They're still spending that money because he knows that Trump would inevitably blow up if he were to read newspaper stories that he was going off the air in a Rust Belt battleground. So he just wants to be there. Remember, this is the same guy who's running ads in the Washington, D.C. media market. Now, in case you don't really know what that means or why that matters, Washington, D.C. is home to a lot of Democrats. It's a very big Democratic place. This is why they don't want to make Washington, D.C. a state or anything like that, D.C. statehood, because it would be controlled by Democrats, basically. And so why would you air something there? Oh, it's because Donald Trump happens to live there. And, of course, he wants to see himself on TV. And, of course, that was a fight with Brad Parscale, who was airing those. Parscale, of course, was replaced by Stepien, who stepped back on a lot of these, forgive the pun, on a lot of that ad spending. And so, anyway, now, many of Swan's sources do say that Trump, not Stepien, is primarily to blame for a lot of the campaign's fading fortunes. Quote, one advisor, a lot of this is the president himself. You can't heal a patient who doesn't want to take the diagnosis. I love how they couch it in medical terms, considering how, of course, Trump had coronavirus and yet refused. 3 days after going to Walter Reed, he's back out there spreading coronavirus everywhere. I mean, come on. Come on. Now, the president, again, if this is right, apparently is not smart enough to understand that he is losing or why he's losing, or his ego can't take it. I don't know. But, as always, fish rots from the head down. So you've got all these problems that are starting right at the top with the president's incompetence and inability to grasp the reality of the situation. maybe I don't know. I think maybe he thinks that he's going to win this still, somehow. And that if he doesn't, of course, he can always step back because he's already laid the groundwork for this. I lost because of fraud. Fake, the election was rigged. I mean, we've seen that. He just can't fathom the idea that the American people now see him as deeply incompetent and as a terrible president. And that, of course, is and always has been his undoing. And at least, hopefully, this time, it will have some sort of consequence for him. Okay. Is that dumpster full of ballots? It could be. I don't know. It depends on if a Republican passed by or not. All right. You know what I'm going to do, actually? Since I am, reading viewer comments, why don't I take a quick break, come back, read some super chats and some more viewer comments, and then we'll come back. So stay right here. We've got more stories, of course, including Trump-loving pastor getting coronavirus, of course, and all that stuff. So stay right here. Around the Nation. We'll be right back right after this break.
Tighten up my meat. I like my meat tight.
Why? You're getting nervous, man.
Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Everybody, welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here. Waldorf Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. All right, so let's see. Let's go over to Twitch here for a couple of comments. Void Queen with a fun comment. With a meme. I love the memes. You hate being a feudal serf, you plow the fields with your liegeless horse. Checkmate, environmentalists. You also needed to add, I'm very smart. I'm very intelligent. That's it. Very intelligent and the smartest. The best. Yes. Also, I don't have any of those, unfortunately. But
Burmisia, they say, pronounce it Burmisia, a real beautiful company.
It's a real beautiful company. There you go. All right, anyway, a couple of super chats here over on YouTube. What was the word? It was maulding. Dango Bangle explains as well. Tearfully or weakly emotional, foolishly sentimental. Thank you for that. Apparently came from Mr. Godzilla. And then points out that racism and classism are insanely powerful. Absolutely. You are correct. Let's see. Thank the slave owners in the 18th and 19th century, says S. Bloom 85 over on Twitch. for the Electoral College. Yay. All right. Anyway, let's move on. A Texas megachurch is suffering a coronavirus outbreak after its pastor took part in a super spreader event at the Rose Garden at the White House. So this was, of course, the event for Amy Coney Barrett, which happened several weeks ago. That's where a lot of people ended up getting sick with the coronavirus. And so, that's like basically ground zero. Hope Hicks, a lot of different people, actually, in the Trump administration had gotten sick as a result of that event. And yet, like a lot of people, this guy also didn't care who he went back and infected. I think it was Mike Lee also. But he was going around maskless during the Amy Coney Barrett hearings. So, wonderful. So now, who is this guy? Pastor Robert Morris. Now Pastor Robert Morris has continued to preach since returning from the Supreme Court nomination announcement for Amy Coney Barrett at the White House, which of course seems to have spread the virus among dozens of attendees, and now new cases are cropping up at his Gateway Church in South Lake, reporting the Star Telegram. So the confirmed cases apparently go up and down daily, said church spokesman Loris Swicegood, who refused to specify how many cases had been confirmed among the church's 850 part-time and full-time employees. So, they go up and down, and all that. Okay, well, what are the numbers? I mean, how many people are infected? A couple? Right. Sure. Morris, who also took part in the prayer march led by Reverend Franklin Graham while in Washington, did test negative twice since the September 26 White House event and has not exhibited any COVID-19 symptoms, according to Swicegood. So, he could be asymptomatic depending on what tests you take, because tests aren't 100% accurate, and you can be asymptomatic and spread the virus. So, and I don't know if the guy was wearing a mask or anything like that. So who knows? But at the same time, somebody there has got coronavirus and is spreading it around to the congregation. But here's a response from the spokesperson. You're going to love this. Not everything you see or read in the paper and on the internet is completely accurate or even true. Now, what is he referring to? He said that he was unsure whether any congregants had tested positive for the virus, and he denied news reports indicating that an outbreak had forced the closure of some portions of the megachurch campus. And so he's saying fake news, essentially. So now here's the thing. Oh, he's saying fake news without actually pointing out what was fake about it. So he's like, don't believe what you read in here. Unless, of course, it comes from us. Then, of course, obviously. Right. Sure. So here's the thing. Religion's fine. Okay, I don't agree with religion. I'm not a religious person. I don't care about your God or your Jesus, your sky God, whatever, right? But if you believe in it, that's fine, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. This kind of moronic crap does hurt other people, though. Now, here's what Morris tweeted a couple of days ago. He said, "There's no COVID in heaven. No sorrow, no tears, no pain, no sickness, no disease, no death. None of that's there. Everything you love is there. Everything you did enjoy on earth is in heaven, but it's 1,000 times better." Okay, but you're not there. You're here, assuming, of course, that it even exists, which I don't believe. You're not there. You're here. So, okay, you're on earth with a bunch of other people who are not looking to find out, by the way, whether or not your sky god exists, because your dumbass gave them a virus that could kill them. I mean, this is deeply irresponsible, because it's not just affecting the congregation. It is also affecting everyone around as well. The communities that they interact with. They don't just go from the church to a bubble. No, they go to the store. They get food. They go and interact with people, right? They probably get together and have parties. I don't know. They could. And so, I mean, we've seen irresponsible behavior from a lot of people. And so that's a problem. You are putting your community in jeopardy. And this is, look, here's the thing. It's deeply irresponsible. I mean, how hard is it to quarantine and not spread this around until you know you're not contagious? I mean, it's not that hard. Shelter in place for a little while. Read the book you're always talking about, the Bible. Put the health and safety of your flock ahead of everything else. Look, if you're a real Christian, you'd actually care about your people because you're supposed to be a leader for them in the actual community. But no, this guy, and the fact that he runs a mega church, usually when you see a mega church, you know what they're about, right? They're usually peddling some sort of grift on people in order to live like a king themselves, while the parishioners happen to struggle. And so that's my problem. And I guess in this case, maybe those people, part of that struggle is dying of coronavirus, which of course, and I hate when they do this, but they're going to chalk it up to, it's God's will. God meant for that to happen. No, how about you fuck off? How about that? You didn't wear a mask. You didn't socially distance. You didn't quarantine when you felt symptoms. You didn't get tested. You didn't use any of the tools available. If God was real, God would call you a fucking moron for not using any of the tools provided to keep you and your community safe. I mean, there's no excuse for this kind of dangerous ignorance. How many pastors have gotten coronavirus and died as a result? Because they left it in God's hands. And that's a problem, okay? Quite a few. To these people, I just want to say, your God gave you a brain, supposedly, right? Why don't you fucking use it? All right. More terrible news on coronavirus. Bad news. So we have some bad news. If there is a major coronavirus outbreak at your job, your employer will no longer have to inform the government. So now, normally, how it's supposed to work is that employers are legally required to notify OSHA whenever a worker ends up hospitalized due to a work-related injury or an illness. Now, that's how it's supposed to work. The Trump administration, however, has changed how it's supposed to work and is reinterpreting some rules which will allow workplaces to not have to report coronavirus outbreaks on the job. Meaning, not only will we not know about major outbreaks, but we'll also not be able to intervene to stop them. And if you're wondering how relevant this is to stopping the spread, keep in mind that some of the worst COVID-19 outbreaks happened in workplaces like meatpacking plants and nursing homes. So these rules, changing and reinterpreting these rules, is going to mean disaster for trying to get coronavirus under control. In fact, Debbie Berkowitz, former OSHA official now with the nonprofit National Employment Law Project, said this is going to lead to a further spread of COVID-19 at work and out into the public. It means the agency will never be able to find out where there are serious outbreaks and will never be able to hold employers accountable, which is why, of course, the Trump administration is trying to do this. So let me give you some of the details of what's going on. The Trump administration is looking to undo a rule issued during the Obama administration, shocker, which states that whenever a worker is hospitalized, suffers an amputation, or loses an eye, the employer has to report the incident to OSHA within 24 hours, by phone or email. Or when an employer learns of a work-related death, OSHA must be notified within 8 hours. So now, hospitalization, of course, happens a lot with coronavirus. And so, of course, with coronavirus, and there were updated guidelines as well on that, saying if you have people at your workplace that test positive for coronavirus, you also have to let people know in the government. Now, the updated guidelines, however, said, and this is from the Trump administration issuing this on September 30th, made clear that the rule would not apply to COVID-19 cases. It pointed to a line in the regulation that says you must only report the event to OSHA if it occurs within 24 hours of a work-related incident. So under the administration's interpretation, work-related incident means an exposure to coronavirus in the workplace. And of course, as we know how the virus works. Symptoms just don't show up within 24 hours. So for the employer to be required to notify OSHA, a worker would have to be exposed to COVID-19, get sick, and hospitalized, all within a 24-hour period. That's not how it works. And they know that. They know that's not how it works. They're not stupid. What they want to do is they want to hide the fact that workers are getting sick. Because for them, the companies, it costs too much to protect them, obviously, and they don't want to be held liable if their workplace gets people sick. And so if you don't report those, well, I mean, then you can just basically ignore that an outbreak is happening. So now, remember, in every coronavirus stimulus deal that the Republicans have been trying to pass, they have put in language to protect corporations from liability for coronavirus. And so this is one more way, I think, for them to try to avoid that. Peg Seminario directed the AFL-CIO's workplace safety program before retiring last year, said OSHA's earlier interpretation was the correct one, and these changes are wrong-headed. She said, quote, "It makes absolutely no sense for the reporting of COVID-19. But it does make sense if you're trying to protect corporations from liability, and also if you're an administration that is relying on the appearance of not having new cases of coronavirus to help your political ambitions." It's one of those things, and it goes back to Donald Trump saying, well, let's slow the testing down because if the reason that we have bigger numbers is because we're testing more. Well, it's the same kind of thought. Like, all these places are reporting coronavirus infections, so why don't we have them to stop reporting those infections, and therefore it won't look so bad. The numbers won't be high. The numbers will go down because nobody's reporting it. That's what they're trying to do. Now, furthermore, David Michaels, who led OSHA under President Obama, said the Trump administration is misinterpreting the rule his team had enacted. He said the new policy fits the Trump administration's broader pattern of denial during the pandemic. If you aren't aware of infections, then the infections are just not happening. Quote, "It's an outrageous distortion." This is OSHA saying they don't want to know where outbreaks are happening. And then, of course, this new policy has had impacts. In May, OSHA issued a fine against a Georgia nursing home that had waited 2 weeks to notify the agency that 6 of its workers had been hospitalized due to coronavirus. But the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, which was first to detail the recent policy change, reported last week that OSHA dropped that citation as soon as they released the new guidance. So by the way, every Republican and conservative that is pissed off, like, oh, look, Andrew Cuomo didn't tell anybody about the coronavirus cases in the nursing homes, and they packed the nursing homes, and the same people, who are mad about Whitmer, well, your guy, Donald Trump, just said, oh, nursing homes, if a bunch of people get infected, we don't have to tell anybody. They don't have to tell you, so we don't have to know. What the hell? What the hell? And by the way, journalists, advocates, all these people will not be able to know the true numbers now. And I love how conservatives have this conspiracy theory that, the Democrats are overinflating the numbers. They're putting out fake numbers. And now you have those same people that are putting out fake numbers that aren't representative of what's really going on with coronavirus, the actual coronavirus numbers of how many people are getting infected. So it's absolutely ridiculous. And not just ridiculous, but it's also dangerous. It's completely unacceptable. Super unacceptable. They don't care about you. If you're a worker, if you're a regular person, they want to send you back to work, even if if your workplace is a den of coronavirus, which increases the likelihood that you'll get it, you'll get sick from it, and not only will you get sick, but you also spread it to your families and to your community as well. But hey, at least a corporation will be protected because Republicans say we must protect corporations at all costs. What can I say? Republicans are a death cult. Now, it's only Democrats, by the way, that are raising the alarm because it actually does impact working people. But for Republicans, look, they don't care. They don't care. They don't give a damn if COVID spreads. In fact, they're pretty open about wanting to infect everyone in order to get so-called herd immunity, which without a vaccine would be an absolute disaster. They are a pro-corporate death cult, and people need to see them for what they actually are. Okay. One more here. You remember from the RNC, the best is yet to come? Yeah. Sure. All right. As President Trump and the Republican Party continue to downplay the virus and push herd immunity, researchers are making some disastrous new predictions about what would happen with the death rate. According to Common Dreams, researchers at the University of Washington School of Medicine are predicting up to an 80% spike in coronavirus deaths by February. Jake Johnson of Common Dreams writes, a model designed by experts at the University for Health Metrics and Evaluation forecasts that the U.S. coronavirus death toll will soar from around 217,000 at present to 389,087 fatalities by February 1st. Now, obviously, of course, that number is not going to be 100% accurate because it is just a guess. But wow, that's huge. Now, that said, under the model's best case scenario guesses, and that best case scenario would basically mean if all Americans were to wear their masks, the U.S. death toll would be predicted to still rise to about 314,000 by the beginning of February. That's still an additional near 100,000 deaths. So understand that even if we do what we need to do, there's still going to be a massive amount of deaths because the coronavirus cases just passed 8 million in this country. There are a lot of people that have coronavirus. Now, that said, that's best case scenario. Okay? That's if everybody said, Republicans included, said, all right, I'm going to wear the masks. Well, we do not live in that world because there are a lot of people who still refuse to wear their mask. In fact, Republicans are trying to get rid of mask requirements. For example, in my state of Michigan, conservatives have successfully taken out Governor Whitmer's emergency powers away. And there are also many people attacking the health department, which has issued similar guidelines to the ones that were removed that were part of Whitmer's executive orders. Now, if conservatives across the country are successful with removing mask requirements, the model predicts total U.S. deaths from the pandemic could rise by February 1st to 477,000. That's nearly 500,000. Jeez. Wow. Now, the Institute, in talking to CNN, the researchers said, quote, we expect deaths to stop declining and begin increasing in the next 1 to 2 weeks. 1 to 2 weeks. So, look, they say the winter surge appears to have begun somewhat later than the surge in Europe, who was also, of course, seeing an increase in coronavirus cases, as we had been warned by medical experts. They said it's going to be a bad winter. How bad it gets, going back to the words of Dr. Fauci, it depends on us. Depends on whether or not we adhere to social distancing and mask requirements, making sure to wash our hands and not hold gigantic events. Now, unfortunately, we haven't done any of that. And so now we're actually going to probably reach maybe not the worst case scenario, but I'd say pretty close to it. In fact, here's what they said about the daily deaths. They estimate that it would reach over 2,000 a day in January, even with many states reimposing mandates before the end of the year. And so this is a train that continues to go off track, and we're not going to be able to stop it. Winter is coming. And as I mentioned before, we were all told back in the summertime, get your shit together, wear a mask, socially distance. Conservatives decided not to do the work. They fucked around, and now we're all going to find out. And it's not just, trying to fearmonger either. We've already seen a massive increase in coronavirus cases. In fact, the U.S. just reported more than 64,000 new coronavirus infections on Thursday, the highest single-day total since late July. It is going up. It is going up. And, of course, that's why you have these, conservative states and government agencies now under Trump that are trying to make sure that we don't count coronavirus infections. As the Washington Post reported on Thursday, in 44 states in the District of Columbia, caseloads are now higher than they were 1 month ago, and many of the new infections are being reported in rural areas with limited hospital capacity. This is something, of course, that Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks, have pointed out, that it would start in the cities and that it would spread out to the coast, and it would spread out into these very underpopulated or sparsely populated areas, the rural areas, and then it would come back. And so now it's spreading to rural areas with not a lot of hospital coverage, and then it's going to snap back to the cities. So Dr. Peter Hotez, professor and dean of tropical medicine at Baylor College, told CNN, the upward trend of new infections is, quote, a very ominous sign. This is the time when we could be entering one of the worst periods of our epidemic and one of our worst periods in modern American public health. I am very worried for the nation. I am too. We should all be concerned. You know who's not concerned, though? President of the United States. Donald Trump keeps doing massive rallies that are basically being described as super spreader events. No masks, very few masks, no social distancing, people standing shoulder to shoulder. And he's not putting a stop to it. He's continuing to campaign. And look, here's the thing about Trump, right? We know he's got some sociopathic tendencies, or at least we can guess, right? From how he interacts with other people, he doesn't care about anybody else but himself. And Donald Trump, he's already had coronavirus, right? And so he had the best medicine our tax money could buy. He was airlifted to Walter Reed Medical Center. He can do that at any time and get the most advanced experimental treatments available. Whereas you and I, we're regular people. We're not the president of the United States. Obviously, we're not going to be treated the same. We might have to fight for remaining hospital beds in our areas because there might not be enough. And so that's one of the big difference. Okay. And look, here's the thing, though. We keep warning people. We keep asking them, please wear a mask, socially distance, don't hold giant events. And they're not listening. And it's because, as Common Dreams reported earlier this week, the White House has embraced the herd immunity approach floated by right-wing think tanks. Now, it's a strategy that experts have warned would result in millions of additional deaths if implemented without a widely available and effective vaccine. In an interview on CNBC on Thursday, Dr. Fauci denounced the herd immunity approach as, quote, nonsense and dangerous. By the time you get to herd immunity, Fauci says, you will have killed a lot of people that would have been avoidable. But unfortunately to them, it doesn't matter. They don't care how many people die. They know the result. They don't care. And that's why they're hiding the deaths. Again, Florida is not reporting deaths anymore from coronavirus. They're just not doing it. Employers are no longer required to report COVID deaths to OSHA, or COVID hospitalizations, I should say, and infections to OSHA. Why do they have to hide the numbers? That's my question. If they're not so bad to begin with. If it's nothing to worry about, why hide it? If you don't want us to succumb to fear, then why are you hiding the numbers from us? Why? It's because the numbers are terrible, and they know it. And so for them, it's much easier to try to sweep it under the rug than to actually be able to deal with it. And to, put forward public policy, and for the president to actually be the president, to be a leader and say to his followers, let's all wear masks, let's all socially distance, let's do all that stuff to make sure our country is safe. But they're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. It is much easier for these people to keep themselves into power when they can go out and gaslight others into thinking that the pandemic is just not happening. It's fake news. That people, they're not dying of COVID-19. No, it's something else. The flu, they got hit by a car, whatever. Look over there, squirrel. They're distracting everyone. And the thing is, they are a member of a goddamn death cult. They don't care if you live or die, as long as they themselves are fine and continue to stay in power. It is absolutely disgusting. All right. That's all I got for you guys today. I'm sorry to leave you off on a bad note here. But, I mean, it is, I guess in the words of the president, it is what it is. And so I'm sorry that our president's a sociopath. And that we are all paying the price for his vanity. It's just disgusting. Socrates, bartender here in Twitch, says, another issue is that they will find any excuse to be right. No, you're absolutely right, too. They can't stand being wrong. And they also, by the way, I also tend to forget that they do certain things to own the libs. Even Herman fucking Cain. Herman Cain died and his family took over the account and is still tweeting stuff that is anti-wearing masks and, basically trying to paint coronavirus as a hoax. Herman Cain's fucking dead. He died from coronavirus. Oh, no, it wasn't coronavirus. It was something else. He had cancer. Yeah. You ever heard of a comorbidity? Jesus Christ, these people are insane. All right. Wow. All right. Fucking crazy. One more here. Again, Dango Mango, happy birthday. Sorry again, everything is so fucked right now. But let me read another super chat here that says, nothing ever bad happened to the Trumps. Quoting allegedly Trump. Yeah. And Void Queen says, dying to own the libs. Absolutely. All right. I'm going to calm down. Going to try to enjoy my Friday the best I can. Hopefully you can as well. Please stay safe. As always, mask up, socially distance, wash your hands, do what you got to do, but stay safe. Thank you, and have a great weekend. We'll be back on Monday. Love you guys, and remember, change begins with you. Please become a patron, support the show, channel memberships as well, and we'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend.
Bermucia, they say, pronounce it Bermucia, a real beautiful company.
Tighten up my meat.
Wet ass P-word.
Yosemite, Thailand, Tolerite, Mike Pounds.
Please clap. You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.